請埋啲官員。
Please also invite officials into the room as well.
今日咧其實一共有
We have 56 deputations or individuals attending the meeting, expressing their views. The Secretariat has also received 8 submissions by groups or individuals, and the written submissions have been sent to members and the administration. We will have 2 sessions today. The first session will last for 110 minutes from 9 to 10 to 11, and then we have a short break. The second session will last for about 90 minutes. In the second session, I have another engagement. Therefore, the Vice Chairman will chair the meeting of the second session. First of all, welcome you all to the meeting. We have quite a large number of deputations and individuals attending the meeting, so I have to impose a time limit on each deputation. Each will be given 3 minutes, and you can see the clock, and a buzzer will sound. And if you have not given your view in writing, please do so after the meeting and send the written submission to the Secretariat. You can put on the earpiece. There is simultaneous interpretation. Channel 0 is the floor channel. Channel 1 is the Cantonese channel. Channel 2 is the English channel. And Channel 3 is the Putonghua channel. And when you speak, please speak into the microphone so that we can hear more clearly. And when you speak, please do not use cocktail language. Please adhere to one language to facilitate interpretation. I'd like to remind you that your views are not protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. Your submissions are also not protected by the provisions in this ordinance. Please take note of that. And please also take note of the rules for members of the public and also those attending our meeting with regard to the security measures, and such security measures have been attached to the letter sent to you. Members of public in the public gallery may also seek a copy of this note. If there is time available, I will ask officials to respond to your views. So we now begin. First of all, the People's Livelihood Development Concern, Mr. Zhou Yuan. You have 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to define what is obstruction or street obstruction. Does it mean that an object is standing in the way in street? I think it's not objects. Objects are not occupying the street. In fact, people are causing obstruction. Every year there are 30 million visitors under the IVS causing obstructions in the street. We cannot call 1823 to complain that there are many people walking in the streets, causing obstruction. That's the real cause of obstruction in the street. I therefore do not understand why the administration has published a consultation paper without any research on the causes of obstruction. The people of Hong Kong have to deal with this problem caused by visitors. And the people of Hong Kong pay a heavy price for that. Now the small operators are extending their operations into the street, and if the law is passed, then the small operators, small shop operators will have to move back into their shops, and cost will increase. They will have less business. They may have to fill up their business. And then some chain stores will take over the shop space. And prices of goods will escalate. Now, since they have to reduce the space for doing business, they can sell less goods, and therefore they cannot be benefited by the economy of scale. And they also need to employ people to do the selling. But because of the reduction in trading space, they may have to dismiss some of the employees, and people will lose their jobs. So who will bear all these consequences if the law is passed? And we also need the street-side cooked food stalls, or the Dai Pai Dong in the local language. People need Dai Pai Dong more than the restaurants in the shopping centers. I do agree that many owners' corporations are against street obstruction. But my question is, the administration has not done any study on alfresco dining or street-side cooked food stalls. Your time is up. Because we have many deputations today, I have to observe the time limit strictly. Next is Mr. Low of the Lion Rock Institute. Thank you, Chairman. The special features of Sai Yung Choi Street, Falun Gong, and also small sellers of mobile phones and mobile phone service, and also street performers, and people also like to take photos. In July last year, suddenly there were vulgar language, claims of threats, intimidation, and everything is a mess. That's the result of putting objects in the street. The government thinks that things is in a mess. It has to be regulated, or such activities have to be regulated. The government is going to regulate that. Are you going to deal with the Falun Gong, or those who are taking photos in the streets, or Long Xiuquan, or who else? And people are asking, the residents are asking you to take action, but those who are performing in the streets have a different view. I have a cousin 5 years older than me. He has a family with his friends. They rented a studio. They pay some rent and then try to do a small business. And then in Mong Kok, there is an institution called Instant 20. It doesn't need to pay rent. It doesn't need to pay electricity bills. They just take photos and help you to take photos in the street, or take photos for you in the street and charge you $20 per piece. And people go there because it's cheap. You can't blame the consumers. They just pay $20 for a photo instead of 100. So what's wrong with my cousin? Why the government discriminate against those who pay rent, to pay bills, utility bills, and do business, and condone those who don't observe the law and occupy the street and use the street to do business without paying rent or utility bills. How can you then convince people into renting a shop to do business? And then Lawrence and Ada, another story. In Mongkok, they have they have florist shops. In Mongkok, they put things in the street. They support different political parties. For Lauren, he is pro-establishment, and Aiden is pro-Democrat. When the government gives discretion to the district councils, and both sides support their own political party. In Mongkok, is under the influence of the pro-establishment. So who will suffer? Well, your time is up. The next speaker. The Hong Kong 19th District Micro and Small Enterprises Association, David Leung. Mr. David Leung. We have several reasons objecting the strengthening of enforcement. This is of our traditional culture. That's the spirit under the Lion Rock. All the street traders who extend their shop front have contributed to Hong Kong's economy in the past 100 years. They have attracted many visitors from overseas, and they spend in Hong Kong. We make money, and then we pay tax. You are sitting in this beautiful chamber because we pay tax. They create jobs. Our association has more than 10,000 members, and they are employing hundreds of thousands of employees, and they help to feed many families. In the past decades, they have contributed to the well-being of Hong Kong. Has anyone not patronized any of the street stalls? Whether you buy fish balls, buy things from boutiques, buy shoes from boutiques. In fact, they are contributing to the economy. Now, they are small operators. They are not big businesses. They are just trying to make a living. They are grassroots employers. They make $20,000 or $30,000 per month, and they belong to the middle class. If you strengthen the law, if you kill them, you kill the middle class, and Hong Kong will die. That's for certain. I oppose strengthening the enforcement, which will kill small businesses. And I know that this society doesn't belong to the businessmen. I think we should set suitable standards. Please do not kill them immediately. Please do not allow people to breach the law for a long time. Say, for example, if the street is wide enough for EVA, then if the street is too narrow, then you should not allow them to extend. But if the street is wide enough, the pavement is wide enough, then allow people to the shop operators to extend 1 or 2 feet from the shop front so that people can, the businesses can survive. We do contribute to society. Let's work together and make money and make a living, and then let us be harmonious. Thank you. Next, the Association of Public Relations Practitioners, Mr. Alan Leung.
對呢個店鋪阻街加強執法同埋定額罰款呢，就有一啲關注嘅。咁首先我哋個睇法就係我哋覺得呢，現時政府一貫有嘅一啲嘅措施同埋一啲法律呢已經足夠規管。喺現階段呢，我哋並唔贊成呢就阻街。
At this stage, we do not believe that there should be strengthening of enforcement of shopfront extensions and penalties. We have the following points that we want to share with you. One, in Hong Kong, the background is that rentals are rising and there's a shortage of land supply. And with this backdrop, the operators, commercial operators, are under a lot of pressure. And in Mongkok, for some of the drinks shops, in fact, they're with a very tiny shop fronts and shop area, they are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for rentals. And it is very difficult for them to operate if you do not allow any extensions, because there is not enough room in the shop for the patrons to even stand within the shop. And we believe that this kind of extension or measures against shopfront extensions would actually not only result in fines for these operators, but also it would take a lot of manpower for work that is unnecessary. Now, another point we would like to share is that it is an idiosyncrasy of Hong Kong. That is, a lot of people, shops are small, and if we do not allow these small shops to operate, the chains will come in, and we are worried about that. And the third point concerning these shopfront extension cases, they are everywhere. With the fixed penalty, we worry that with its enforcement, you will also have to set up the priorities for enforcement. And as we have mentioned, the extensions and the obstructions to the streets are different in each case. And how are you able to categorize them or prioritize them? We are concerned about that too. And another point is that Hong Kong is quite politicized as it is now. If there are these measures and these penalties, would people utilize this as an opportunity to tighten the conditions for operation of the small shops again? And every year there will be a raising of the level of penalties, etc. Yes, indeed, we notice that certain extensions are overly extensive for certain shops, and those should be enforced against. Because of time, you have to stop here. Hong Hom Area Committee, Yao Suk Fong. Thank you very much. I would like to make full use of time. I have already heard deputations talking about obstruction of streets, and they all say that we should be lenient to the shop operators. Now, should the government and Hong Kong let people know if they are businessmen, they have to be self-disciplined, and the people also of Hong Kong have to be self-disciplined. I have myself seen this. There was a helper pushing a wheel car with a pawpaw, an old grandma sitting in it, and she was not able to pass the shopfront or the street because of shopfront extension. I thought the shop operator would apologize, but in fact she was criticized for coming into a crowded area, such as that particular street, in her wheelchair. But streets are streets. They are not shopfront or part of the shopfront. Well, I myself am an operator. Well, I think back, perhaps I was stupid because I did not extend into the street. I should have extended into the street while my neighboring shops were extending 1 foot and then 2 and then 3 feet into the streets. But I have been abiding by the law all along. Some people think that the penalty is a levy. It is but part of a tax that they have to bear. And therefore, the shop operators very often have these arguments with the enforcement officers. And very often, after the enforcement officers have left, an hour or so later, the shops will put out the extensions again. As a woman, I like to go shopping, and I notice this a lot. And I think for penalties and what exactly is the level of fine, there is no standardization. Well, for jaywalking, that attracts what, $500? I think we have to be more disciplined and self-disciplined. As people of Hong Kong become more disciplined and self-disciplined, Hong Kong will become a more harmonious society. Yeah, the advertisement, TV advertisement is very good. There are pregnant women, there are people in wheelchairs. Shouldn't we leave the streets unblocked for them? Well, of course, operators of businesses should know that operating a business is not easy. If you think it's easy, you're wrong. And you should not go into business. And it is not for them to extend into the streets just because it's not easy to run a shop. Jingshan Restaurants Association. Yes. We believe that the streets should be unobstructed so that there can be a flow of pedestrians passing by without hindrance. And I think the government should enforce the relevant laws. And we also believe that there should be good management of the operators. Now, I would like to discuss each of the points. First of all, the government should understand that certain streets are large streets and they are market streets. In the morning there are a lot of people and at night there are almost no pedestrians. And the shops or the stalls basically sell all their goods within a very short time. And after that they fold up and do not operate for the rest of the day. And perhaps there should be certain understanding of that kind of operation. And there are streets in my area where the nighttime, there are nighttime patrons, and basically the business is nighttime only. And for the street that I operate on, in fact, because of the thriving business, there are over 2,000 employment opportunities. And for the restaurants business, which is operating under very stringent, very difficult situations because of the economy, if you are too strict in the enforcement, we may have to cut over 1,000 positions, employment positions. So I think we have to be understanding and flexible as well in enforcement. But what is most important is that there is a prerequisite, and that is the street have to be unobstructed for the pedestrians, that they can pass by, flow through easily. So there is an area which is admissible. There has to be a demarcation line over which it will be too much obstruction. And also this demarcation line is important for the enforcement officers. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for them to know. And also there will be controversies. We do not want to be dealing with small issues all the time. But if we can perhaps lay down these big disciplines and criteria, then I think the enforcement would be smooth. Mr. Park Hon-ban of the New People's Party. Street obstruction is very serious in certain areas. Apart from nuisance, inconvenience, and obstruction and noise pollution to the people of Hong Kong, we have to look at this issue square in the face. In the past, measures have not been effective. Shopfront extension, obstructing the street, is an offense. We support this. We support the enforcement, we support restrictions, and we support fixed penalties. But the government has to be careful in setting the level of the fine. Is it heavy enough to deter such offenses? And stepping up with the enforcement is also something we support. But the consultation paper is not in detail, does not set out in detail about the levels of the fines. And if we can simplify the law concerned and also strengthen the enforcement, that would be good. Now, the district council boards or councils should also be brought into the scene because they understand their own area, they understand the situations and conditions faced by the shop operators, and they should be involved in setting the priorities for enforcement, and also to help the government in education and in persuading the shop operators in improving the situation. We also understand that even though there are mechanisms for FEHD licensing for making certain open areas as restaurant or eateries places, but in fact these daipaidongs and alfresco dining or eateries have become a district idiosyncrasy, and to close these shops or to will be a negative impact on the idiosyncrasy of the districts. We think that there should be certain give and take to allow this kind of idiosyncrasies to continue to flourish for certain areas. The Hong Kong Wholesale Florist Association Limited, Mr. Lai, please. Well, for the flower market, it's been in existence for over 100 years in Hong Kong. Not only had it spanned several generations in terms of operators, it had also been contributing to the livelihood and economy of Hong Kong. And the flower market had been striving on their own strengths and ingenuity. It was a self-generated group of operators, and it is now supplying the entire Hong Kong population with fresh flowers, and the government had never given any subsidies or any help to the operators or flower shop operators in the flower market. And it is a wonderful place for leisure, for tourism. Every day there are a lot of tourists, foreign tourists, even though they do not buy any flowers from the operators, but the operators are careful and patient to explain to them the operations of flowers, etc. So this is a characteristic of Hong Kong, and this is part of the contribution to the harmony and economy of Hong Kong. In fact, if Hong Kong is doing well overall, there will be more shoppers in the flower market. And if there are more businesses, more offices opened in Hong Kong, there will be more demand for flowers. But on the other hand, there are a lot of difficulties that we face. For example, flowers have to be sunned and pruned and watered, and they will have to grow and extend. And on the other hand, if the flowers are kept in crates and put away, they will very quickly wilt. But because of overly zealous enforcement by the FEHD in the past year and the past period of time, our customers disperse when they see them, and as a result, the flower market became very quiet. There were no patrons, and the operators couldn't survive. And it is very strange. The same person, the same shop, the same operator with the same crate of flowers. The FEHT officer actually issued 2 tickets for the same offense, for the same obstruction. Now, that has not happened, since the colonial days. Now, the operators are at a loss as to why that happened. 2 tickets for the same obstruction or offense. Yes. Mr. Wong Tai Kwong of the Hong Kong Commercial Industrial General Association Limited, Yuen Long Branch, who is not here with us. Mr. Deng Tan Wo of the Incorporated Owners of Tuen Mun Ming Wai Building.
I support the government in respect of imposing a fine on shopfront extension. They can do business, but they shouldn't cause obstruction to passengers. They shouldn't occupy the streets so that people have to walk onto the carriageway. That's very dangerous. They only pay rent for the shop, and they put their paraphernalia into in the street or onto the pavement. And they cause obstruction to the pedestrians. Many have spoken on that. I therefore support stepping up enforcement action against shopfront extension. They should improve the situation. Thank you. Next is Ms. Wu of the Hong Kong Catering Industry Association. Good morning, honourable members. I would like to speak a few words for justice and for the catering industry. We really have been asking for more space for al fresco dining, and the administration has not speed up the process and has not improved planning. The average waiting time for application is 15 months. It's really unreasonable. Operating cost is very high and rising. Rents are high. We need to find more sources of income. We need to respond to the demand of our patrons. If the administration just suppress us and do not help us, and does not help us, then they are just combating the investors. We have strong objection towards the enforcement action against shopfront extensions. We are against a fixed penalty arrangement. Shopfront extension is different from littering or smoking. The extension itself is a matter of judgment. And many extend their business into the streets because of people's demand. Some people may not like it, but many patrons feel that al fresco dining has special characteristics, and they welcome that. So it's unreasonable to impose any fine. And there are difficulties of law enforcement. There are many circumstantial factors. In issuing a fixed penalty ticket, there may be disputes, and we are afraid of abuse of power and also imposing a series of fines. The proposed $1,500 fine is utterly not acceptable. In the past, the magistracy only impose an average fine of about $500 on street obstruction. So it is a minor offense. And it doesn't involve any hygiene or breeding of germs. And therefore, this cannot be equated with littering. We oppose the proposal of picking black spots by district councillors and setting priorities by the district councils. Many district councillors will favor the residents and ignore the interests of small operators. We don't trust the district councillors, and we shouldn't allow the district councillors to call the shots. Otherwise, that will only promote populism, damage business environment. The next speaker. Mr. Cheng Tat Hong of the Civic Party. Thank you, Chairman. I'm Cheng Tat Hong of the Civic Party. I would like to ask you why you are here. The Civic Party is of the view that when shops are doing their business and they extend, the operators extend shopfront, they are causing obstruction. Otherwise, they're causing a lot of trouble, and therefore the administration has spent a lot of time on dealing with the matter. Now, we can find a suitable balance. First, the fine should be step up with regard to shopfront extensions. We have no objection to the proposal. The system, fixed penalty system, enhances the effectiveness of law enforcement. The Civic Party is of the view that the administration can make reference to the level of fixed penalty for littering, which is $1,500. As for law enforcement departments, the FEHD and the police should be given the power, but the district lands office or the lands department and the buildings department have to take more time to do enforcement, so the administration should consider whether to give power to these two departments or not. In dealing with street obstruction, the FEHD has been lenient and has exercised quite broad discretions. Shop operators have to pay high rent. Therefore, they want to find ways to enhance their income. That's understandable. The civic party is of the view that if the shop operators can exercise self-restraint and if they do not cause serious obstruction, then some sort of leeway should be given. But if the obstruction is quite extensive, affecting pedestrians and other shop operators, or if they block the way so that even a wheelchair cannot get through, then law enforcement should be taken. Now, there are disputes because there is no platform to deal with this, involving all the stakeholders. The Civic Party proposes that the administration should work with local groups, residents groups, and shop operator associations to form a platform to deal with the various issues arising from short front extensions. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwok of the Incorporated Owners of Glamour Garden. The owners of Glamour Garden support enhancing law enforcement. Now things are out of control. Take Glamour Garden as an example. The shops on the ground floor are causing a lot of obstruction. We call the government departments, the FGHD and other departments. They just try to persuade the operators to toe the line, but to no avail. And we therefore have to take action. We take legal action and we spend a lot of time. And when they change their shop sign, then the court order becomes null and void. And therefore, we support a fixed penalty system. And we have 3 points of concern. The level has to be strong enough to be a deterrent. And the system should not allow recidivism. If there are repeated offenses, then penalty should be enhanced. And there should be a suitable mechanism to follow up on the payment of penalty. We also hope that the government will give priority to dealing with long-standing black spots. We also propose that there are many buildings which suffer the same situation as the Glamour Garden. There may be some space in front of the building which is linked up with the pedestrian pavement. This is private space, but therefore the administration doesn't take any action. But the owners can do very little about this because this is common space of the building. And we rely on the government to take enforcement action. We know shop operators have a difficult time. But before they rent, shouldn't they consider the space and also the layout of the shop, whether it is suitable for the business? When you rent the shop, you think that you will put your goods on the pavement, then you better not rent this shop because the shop is not suitable for your business. You cannot just say that I sell fruit, I sell vegetable. It's our common practice to put it in front of the shop. Why can't they put all the goods in their shop? I think that's what they should do. Next, Ms. Lam Choi Lin, Eastern District Councillor. With the abolition of the municipal councils in the year 2000, shopfront extension has become very serious, and the Food and Environment Committee of the District Council has issued many letters to the government departments to deal with street obstruction by shops. I have brought along our minutes. Now we have 27 follow-up items, 19 black spots, and 6 black spots for the advertising racks. There are 179 black spots caused by shop extension. There is also the issue of foreign domestic helpers occupying the streets, and also car washing shops causing environmental problems. The streets in the Eastern District are very narrow. The government should deal with this problem. The shops are extending their business onto the streets. I hope that we should have the fixed penalty arrangement, but 1,500 is a reference. If you just drop a small amount of litter, you'll find $1,500. If a shop operates and occupies in the street, then they should pay a heavier penalty because they do business. The government should think hard on this. District councillors are put on the spot. We cannot set priorities, and it's difficult for us to set priorities of law enforcement. Everybody is equal before the law, and there should be clear guidelines for law enforcement. In the Eastern District, we are not against, say, pedestrian precincts or shop extension precincts, so that in other districts, and this should be agreed upon by the parties concerned, by the stakeholders, so that in the future law enforcement officers can do their job. If the law is not enforced, then the law may just not exist. And I think the government is also caught in between. Shouldn't the government departments talk to the district councils, look into the details, so that we can balance development and regulation? Many residents really want to walk in the streets. They really don't want things to stand in their way. Next, Ms. Tong Kin Lei of Sha Tin District Councillor. I am Tong Kin Lei of the Sha Tin Tai Wai constituency.
Yes, the operators are under very difficult situations, and they want to maximize their profits with a very small investment. But on the other hand, we have to be combating offenders as well. While the operators need to make money, the pedestrians and the people of Hong Kong need to cross the streets, need to pass by, and need to go home. Now, Sha Tin is heavily afflicted by shopfront extensions, causing nuisance to the people of Sha Tin. And the District Council of Sha Tin had done 2 rounds of efforts to urge for review of the legislation and also the enforcement to combat that grave situation. And there was unanimous support from the members of the council. And for the consultation paper issued this round by the government, it is a late spring to the residents of Sha Tin. And we have also consulted the mutual help organizations and owners associations. We have come to the following points. First of all, raise a penalty or fine from 1,500 to 2,000 to 3,000, and also there should be a time limit for the operators who extend into the streets. After the first prosecution, if there is repeated offense, after a certain period of time had elapsed, there can be a second ticket issued, much like illegal parking. So the enforcement, in terms of the priority for extensions, should be set not by the district council but by the enforcement authorities. We also want to step up education. I know that for the inspection teams, the manpower is insufficient. We would want to see that there are additional members or resources put into these spot checking or site inspection teams. And where there are obstructions of the streets, such as fitness and telecom publicity stalls that are mobile, or where there are mobile publicity setups, such as those on vans and lorries, they should be action should be taken against them as well. Mr. Chow Ping Tim of the Pt1 District Council member. I mean, I do not need to repeat myself because we already have submissions. Now, shopfront extensions had been a nuisance for the residents for a long time, for Pt1 for the longest time. In fact, it had always been a sickness, a great illness on the part of Hong Kong and the government. It is riddled with diseases. Now, this time the government is really standing up and coming up with these combating measures for shopfront extensions, including a fine. Why do we not support them? I mean, if you take no action even with this kind of background and situation, the people will be in Hong Kong will be disappointed. 1,500 is too small a fine, and also there should be different categories of fines. For dry goods, 1,500, wet goods to 2,200, and eateries and restaurants over 2,800 for them to have any deterrent effect at all. If the shops continue to obstruct the streets, in fact, there should be enforcement against them because they are making money, they are making profits, and the rentals should apply only to the shop area, not outside of the shop. So therefore, the tax bureau can come into play. Over the years, I have observed that if there are 2 meters to the pedestrian walkway, then there can be certain extensions for a transitional period. But on the other hand, for the longer term, it has to be fair in the enforcement. Everything has 2 sides, advantage and disadvantage. Since the government is so determined this time, with all the show and fanfare, TV advertising included, well, the operators, of course, will have their excuses. They'll come up with all kinds of reasons, but they have their ways of making money as well. They should not treat the streets as a fixed area within their shopfront. Well, I think the tax bureau can also help in combating this. Well, if they cannot do that, in Pt1, as the chair of the Health and Hygiene Committee, we will take our action. And I would like to see the government taking up this proposal as well. So, and as mentioned just now, the written submission can be as long as you want, and your oral presentation does not have to be exactly the same as the written submission. So the deputations can be succinct in your presentations. Whether it is oral or written, the lecturer will look at your opinions very carefully. I am a council member from the Pt1 district, representing the central area of Chinwan, where the shopfront extension situation is very grave indeed. Now, there are measures, but there are ways while the shop operators are evading their measures. That is to say, they construct a kind of mobile or a platform outside of their shop that can be taken down. And this is a hazard to safety, especially traffic safety in Chunlong Street in particular, Hebui, Shachui, Sanchun, these 3 streets. We have been for over a year a traffic black spot, these 3 streets. And the reason is because there are too many pedestrians and too many cars. And we very much want to see in this legislation, we'll be able to do something for this area. Yes, we have heard from small operators that rentals are very high and they have therefore to extend outside of their shops. But why are rentals so high? It is because the large enterprises have bought up their shop areas, the shop units, and they are levying a very high rental fee, and they are intending for the operators to extend outside of the shop. Now, can you imagine if you're flanked, as an operator, if you're flanked by 2 shops which extend out into the streets, how can you survive? And that is really not right in terms of logic. And somebody said 5 feet of shop area can merit 1 feet of extension, and 6 feet of shop would merit 2 feet of extension. Now, if the shop is 20 feet deep, then what, 15 feet of extension? How would that work? I really want to see that there should be penalties and fines regardless. And also, after a certain time had relapsed, there can be a second ticket issued for the same offense, much like illegal parking. And in the long run, this will help with the environment and safety. So we do want to see a fixed fine, so as to make it easier for the FEHD in enforcement. We have talked about the $5,000 cap, but in fact, very often we see that only 500 or less is slapped on the offenders. The Democratic Party, Mr. Falk. Well, actually, the shop extension is an illegal act. It is an offense against the law. Now, for enforcement, in the government's consultation, it does not specify the areas that's covered. Well, many deputations have mentioned that already. Within the consultation period, have we talked about what function the pedestrian walkway should serve? If we look at the planning guidelines for Hong Kong, the function of the streets is archaic. The pedestrian walkway is for pedestrians to go from point A to point B, such as from their home to a bus stop or a transport terminus or another place. And because of that, because people are walking on the streets should be entertaining and provide fun. And that understanding is archaic in the sense that the streets should serve another purpose, so that the people can feel a kind of neighborhood, a kind of sense of belonging from walking on these streets. Say, for instance, they can group together and talk to the shop operators or talk among themselves. I do not agree well, in the sense that whether the shop extension should be 5 feet or 6 feet, we can look at the pedestrian flow, the peak hours, whether it is peak hours for people to go marketing or going to the office or coming home. I mean, only then will we be, with such analysis, will we be able to come up with reasonable measures. And I also agree that district councillors are able to very closely understand the demands and wishes of the people and the residents there, and also the difficulties faced by the operators. If we look at the various papers and the consultation paper itself, they are really silent on this point. So I support a consensus reached by all stakeholders after discussions. I would like to talk to you about Kai Fong Yingjie, and she's an operator of a cooked food stall in Changsha, and the patrons are old people. They mostly live in Yunzhao Estate, So Oak Estate, and some of the older residential buildings. And these Kaifeng old people would go to the Caritas medical service nearby, and they would go marketing, etc. And these old people would be tired walking around. And there was this old lady who was very tired, and she asked Yingjie for a folding chair, and so she sat down, and other people followed suit, and there was a thriving little community around Yingjie. After the old people have left, Yingjie would fold up the chair and carry on, and would not obstruct the street. But I can tell you, there was a time when an FEHD officer actually fined Yingjie $1,200 because 2 folding chairs were not collected in time and were obstructing the streets in the minds of the FEHD. Can you imagine this kind of an operator, such as Yingjie, being fined over $1,000? I mean, this is affecting the old people, of course, and also destroying the ambience and the sense of belonging in the neighborhood. Now, what is street obstruction? If it is just putting an item or two outside of the door, that is meaningless as a definition. A tiny bit of extension is not obstruction of streets. I mean, enforcement cannot be that strict. It is highly problematic if it is too rigid. Well, Yingjie says, in Yingjie's case, $1,000 or $1,200 of fines, way too high for such small operators, and for them issuing a ticket in the morning and the afternoon is really driving the operators into a dead alley and just giving up to the big chain operators. We should not, because of a few examples or a few offenders, disallow all extensions. Yes, that is from the Kaifeng. Mr. Leung Chi Kwang.
I'm originally from the UK, so today I'd like to talk from the perspective as a designer, which is my profession, as a Hong Kong citizen, and also as a tourist as well. So I've been here for 4 years. Originally I moved to Hong Ham. After 3 months, I decided to move to Yao Jimong. The reason why I moved to that particular area was because I saw a lot of independent shops, outdoor eating, family-owned shops, streets craftsmen, street life, and a strong sense of community. And these are exactly the types of shops that we're talking about today. We're talking about paidongs, we're talking about people that use the streets for business. But I personally feel that this way of operating is truly unique to Hong Kong. I mean, I've been around Europe. I've seen many ways how shops are operating or how the public or the neighborhoods are operating. But when I came to Hong Kong, I truly felt that there was a strong sense of community, and a use of this public space was very interesting for me and inspiring. So the policy and a penalty fee of $1,500, I think, is very suffocating for these shops and paidongs, especially after learning that even some paidongs, their rent is even $1,500. So I find it very difficult to justify that 1 month's rent could be lost with just one particular fine. I think today we're also talking about the quality of life. Some people have been mentioning like shopping malls, whether we are actually supporting organizations like the Link. Personally, I feel like by implementing this type of policy and this penalty will really stifle these independent shops. We're also talking about an issue of good design, and I think it's important to collaborate with urban planners, architects, designers and researchers, and especially community organizations, because community organizations and people in the community really do connect with the neighborhood. I think more so than district councillors. I rarely have any communication with my district councillor in Yaojimong after living there for 4 years, and some policies that I've seen the district councillor implement I think are also questionable. I think we could also look at other cities and examples of how they've used design and working with the community to implement what they call world-class streets. There's a New York policy or program called World-Class Streets where they've improved the pedestrian walkways. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Yip Ho Lun of the Yau Ma Tei Resident Group. I have several points. Just now, some councillors say that people do business with a small capital but earns a lot. But your capital is not small if you look at your rent and also the fines. Probably they don't understand the situation of the shop operators. As for fairness, the fixed penalty of $1,500 is considered to be fair. But if you look at fairness, look at parking shop. Now, it moves its goods in and out, you find it $1,500. And if you impose a similar fine to a small shop, is it fair? Well, parking shop, you don't even scratch the surface if you find parking shop for $1,500. Now you want to do good to people by proposing the law. Now you have the advertisement in 2010 is a game, a sort of a game by McDowell, and then you have the second ad, which is to give way. You try to demonize the shop operators. You ask the shop operators to give way. But in fact, we can reach agreements on how to use the streets. We can choose to negotiate instead of relying on the law to solve the problem. Some members say that legislation will force people to exercise self-restraint. I think that's untrue. You need to understand the community relation. If you put a stool in the street, you allow people to take a rest. The officials may say putting a bench in the street or putting a stool in the street is obstruction. But people sit there and talk, and that creates the community. The proposed legislation will facilitate law enforcement, but the proposal has not taken into account community relation. Some district councillors may say they are acting in the interests of the residents. They are reflecting the complaints of the residents. But I suggest to the district councillors, when the law is enforced, you will see the streets becoming very quiet. People are just walking from one place to another place, and there is no contact, no interaction. But streets should be a place for people to interact. And the next is Mr. Chang Yan Hong, a Kowloon District Councillor. With regard to enhancing the law enforcement against shopfront extensions, I have provided my written submission. I want to highlight several points in my submission. I want to share them with you, and that may stimulate some discussions. There are three important issues. Do you support enhancing law enforcement against shopfront extension? Do you support fixed penalty? And what do you think about a suitable level of fixed penalty? In my constituency in Whampoa, I issued 400 questionnaires and I received 200 odd returns. And people put down their names, telephone numbers, and addresses. But I keep all these secret, and their views will be forwarded to the Home Affairs Department for reference. When they returned the questionnaires, they didn't fill in the questionnaires lightly. They did it seriously, and the questionnaires were not filled up by myself. They are of the view that 56% believe that $1,500 are suitable, and 33% believe that the amount should be more than $1,500. That's the first point I want to raise for discussion. The second point is enhancement of law enforcement and allowing the shop operators to do business. The Kowloon District Office, the District Council, FEHD, and the police in Whampoa Sunchun and Hong Kong Market conducted an operation against a shopfront extension in 2010. In the operation, we did take into account the difficulties of the shop operators. Because of high rent, we adopted a lenient approach. We didn't allow the shops to occupy the street or the pedestrian pavement more than 1/4 or not, or they should not leave behind. They should leave behind at least 1.5 a width of 1.5 meters to ensure clear passage for wheelchairs. And if the pavement is less than 1.5 meters, they are not allowed to extend. Next is Ms. Choi Shie-yin of the Chun Mun Leung King Estate Leung Wai House Mutual Aid Committee. Thank you, Chairman. In fact, many speakers have already spoken what I intend to say. I support the argument that shopfront extensions have caused a lot of danger. They cause obstruction to wheelchairs. They cause obstruction to the elderly walking by, and some have to walk onto the on the carriageway and causing a lot of danger. I support imposing a fine on these extensions, and if they commit repeated offenses, I suggest that if they commit 3 repeated offenses, then they should be sentenced to social service order. They should be dealt with seriously. Thank you, Chairman. Next, from the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, Mr. Vincent Cheng. Thank you, Chairman. In Sam Shui Po, Yau Chim Mong, Yuen Long, Tai Wai, there are many black spots of street obstruction. They cause a lot of noise nuisance and also obstruction. The DAB supports taking action against serious obstruction, and the paraphernalia and goods should be confiscated. But for those who only occupy a small portion of the pavement and who do not cause obstruction, then the frontline officers should assess the situation and try to be lenient instead of adopting a broad-brush approach and balance the interests of different parties so as not to undermine the business environment. There should be a fixed penalty system to effectively and efficiently deal with street obstruction. And we have the following suggestions. The amount should be big enough to be a deterrent so that the fine shouldn't just be part of the operating expenses. The fine should be time limited. After the first fine, if there is no improvement, then the law enforcement agency should issue another ticket, and the amount should be bigger and bigger. And a fine is only an ancillary measure, and it should not replace the summons system. Say within a certain period of time, if there are repeated offences under the fixed penalty system, then the shop should be prosecuted, and the license of the eating establishment should be suspended. Warning should be given before the first enforcement action. As for the role of the District Council in setting priority of law enforcement, the DAB is a review. The District Council is only an advisory body. It is not a law enforcement body. The priority for law enforcement against shopfront extension should not be set by the District Council, but set by the law enforcement agencies upon consultation with the District Councils. The District Councils only monitor the law enforcement activities. They should set up special teams or enhance the special squads to deal with shopfront extensions, and there should also be a redeployment and of the officers so that they will not favor particular shops. And there should be civilized and courteous enforcement by the officers, and there should be a uniform standard for all of Hong Kong instead of adopting double standards for different districts. Thank you. Next, Ms. Josephine Chen of the Democratic Party. My apologies, Mr. Chairman, I'm caught in heavy traffic. The Democratic Party has the following view. This is very strange that the consultation is done by the HAB. With regard to combating shopfront extension, street obstruction, and matters of the like, all along, the FHD is the leading government department. Now, the consultation is done by the HAB, and it involves the summary offences ordinance, which is enforced by the law, by the police rather than the FHD. That's strange. We've noticed that special feature, and we have the following suggestion. This is just like the recycling baskets. In the past, they were put everywhere in the streets, and therefore there was a clearance campaign, and it had been successful to a certain extent. If we quote the same apply the same example, I believe we can do the same. But we need to pay attention to 2 points. First, law enforcement standard should be clear. Law enforcement principles should be clear. Rather, the FGHD's position is that there should not be any extension, however small it is. But how can you define illegal shopfront extension? Many speakers have spoken on how much space is required to how much space is required to be left on the pavement. How much tolerance would you give to the shopfront extension without causing obstruction to the passers-by? One representative has put it very clearly that it should not cause obstruction to the wheelchairs.
And therefore the power would be limited, would not be overly extended. As for the district councils, what should their role be? Let's say if there are lots of complaints received for a particular area of neighborhood, then these areas can be labeled black spots. The Pt1 District Council included and many others, there is a committee, a working committee for concern over illegal shopfront extensions and obstructions. And we can label certain areas black spots. Let me just mention one point. There is a problem, and that is deep in the night, in the middle of the night, the FEHD has no resources to do any patrols, and that is a problem. Yes, we will go into the question session right after. I would like to introduce to you the members from the administration. First of all, we have Mr. Eric Hui Kwok-san, Deputy Director of Home Affairs, Mr. Francis Chu Chan Pui, Senior Consultant, Home Affairs Department, Mr. Sin Kwok Hao of the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, Ms. Leung Yun Sheng, Senior Superintendent, Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, Mr. Jacob Cheung Tak Kung, Assistant Commissioner, Hong Kong Police Force, Mr. Ken Yeung Man Pun, Superintendent, Operations, Hong Kong Police Force, Ms. Olga Lam of the Lands Department, Mr. Joel Ng, Principal Land Executive of the Lands Department, Mr. Jackie Chong of the Buildings Department. Yes, we have a number of members who will want to speak, starting with Mr. Cheung. We have 28 minutes, perhaps 4 minutes each then. Mr. Cheung, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a member of this panel. Thank you for giving me the time to speak at this meeting. I would like to thank the deputations for coming up. We have a number of colleagues from the district councils and from different trades and walks of life. Thank you very much for coming to this meeting. For the restaurant business, as I've mentioned, during my tenure as a district councillor, I've been criticized for helping the restaurant operators. But I would like to observe here that a fixed penalty or fine will have less impact on the restaurant operators than on other people. Ms. Kwong talked about the operator, a cook food stall operator, fined for $1,200 because of 2 folding chairs. And I can tell you, for restaurant owners, not only are we fined, but not only are they fined, but also points are taken off them, and after a few rounds of that, their license would be suspended. For eateries and restaurants included, even if it is just a broom put on the streets, they will be fined. However, within the license, the terms is that we have to, the restaurant owners or the operators will have to clean their own shop fronts. And if the broom, as mentioned just now, was accidentally placed on the streets, it will be fined as well. Well, on Monday, Mr. Fang Gong and I will be inviting different members from the trade, and we'll be listening to their different views. And on Mr. Yip Ho Loon's point, I have to say I like the points that he shared. Well, I don't think he's from the trade. He's not an operator, but he basically just observed the situation in the community and made his observations. Mr. Chow Ping-kun, I've known for a number of years. I actually ran into him in the cafe downstairs, and he has his stance and I have my position. But he said that the government is sick. In fact, I think the government is gravely ill because there are so many popularly elected members with votes, supporting votes running to the millions. What does the government have to fear? I mean, today people are criticizing the financial secretary, why we have fallen down 2 spots in the league, but perhaps 20 years later we will be in the 30th position, and we do not know how we can wade back to the top. We'll be looking on today as the good days then. As Mr. Chow had mentioned, if the fine is $2,800, that's his proposal, then there will not be any ground-level restaurants operating anymore. I mean, if the fine is so harsh, they will be moving up to the 18th floor, Block C. So that is too onerous. I mean, for the 18 districts, the 18 district councillors being popularly elected, you have no problem in passing that if you really want to. The government is not only ill, it is dying. Mr. Chen Chi-chun. I also want to thank the deputations for coming up. We have heard from residents, and today we're very happy to hear from the small shop operators and those who are concerned about the community and their neighborhood. Because if we only look at street obstruction as street obstruction, it is very simple. All we have to do is to enforce in the strictest manner and slap on the biggest fine. But is that the issue? Is that the solution? It is about a management of expectations, expectation for balance for the use of the pedestrian walkway, for fines, for cookie cutter fine. And as one of the deputations have mentioned, there should be different levels of fines applicable to different operations. Well, can you give me an opinion? Let's say a turnover of a few $100s per day for a shop operator. Would you slap on the same level of fine as a $1 million turnover shop, or Causeway Bay and in other area, the rentals are very different? Do you again slap on the same fine? Well, some people actually raise a possibility of pegging the fine to the type of business. Your views, Mr. Limington? Well, we're in the florist business. Actually, this is a very mobile business, in the sense that the flowers actually in the past arrived mostly in the morning. But these days, because of the logistics, transports, and flights arriving at night, the flowers may arrive at night. And you know how big the flower market is in Kowloon, along Princess Edward Road, or the side streets near that area. And you know how small an area it is. And in fact, the flower market is now really a distribution center, a hub for distribution for the operators on the streets of the flower market. In fact, some of the turnover is but $1,500 a day. So how can you fine him such a big fine? And I have heard from a phone-in radio program saying that the flower market is a icon and characteristic of Hong Kong. If the flower market is not, would Hong Kong be an icon? So I think for this kind of fine, I think for the medium to small businesses, it is very difficult. So I'm not for fixed fine and penalty. Anybody else? Leon Taiwan? Just to respond on that question, I understand your point in saying that where there are special situations with certain areas and where the operators have raised certain special suggestions, then perhaps it is admissible, certain practices for certain areas. Now, I've looked at certain data for areas which have no pedestrian flow, let's say at night, perhaps 1/3 of extension to 1/3 of the width of the street, perhaps, or a quarter is admissible. Now, as for in the daytime, let's say noontime in Causeway Bay, actually from morning till 6 or 7 at night, extending 3-4 feet into the streets should not be allowed. I agree. Now, as for daily turnover of the size of the business, that's very difficult to peg the fine to that. That would be difficult. Yes, there's another Mr. Chow Ping-tin who want to respond as well. Please be succinct because 2 members have named me, so I feel obliged to respond. Yes, it was mentioned just now that different operators may have different costs and different operating conditions, and therefore it cannot be a cookie cutter or a standardized fine. But I think everything's different. I mean, for illegal parking, a luxurious car attracts the same fine as an illegally parked cheaper car. I mean, we're really talking about 2 different things. Shop extension is prevalent in every district. And it cannot be solved as a problem. If we can solve that problem, we don't have to come up with all this. Yes, please be succinct. Ms. Chung? Thank you, Mr. Chair. For strengthening the combating of shopfront extensions, there are 2 reasons for so doing. One, the shops are extending further and further into the streets, and the pedestrians cannot pass by. Not all streets are 6 feet wide. Some are only 2 feet wide, and the pedestrians need to go into the carriageway. Second, for restaurants, in the past, they just put out 2 tables onto the streets for alfresco dining, but they're extending further and further into the streets. But it affects the residents upstairs. It's a great thing indeed. Alfresco dining, a lot of fun. But what about the people, especially children, living upstairs? I have the question put to the deputations, and I hope the administration understands that this is not just about fines. Even if we add a few $100s to the penalty, it may well not solve the problem. For those of you who object to the proposal in the consultation paper that is on combating extended shop fronts, I have this question for you. Now, the shops are extending further and further into the streets, and the pedestrians cannot cross and pass by. I'd like to know whether the shops can exercise self-discipline, whether they can improve on their practice. A further question for the people objecting to the proposal, and that is for alfresco dining. Do you have a solution as to their effect on the on the residents living upstairs?
Mr. Fogg. Thank you, Chairman. Just a simple reply to Ms. Cheng's question. Now, we've came across this interesting case. Exactly in Yau Ma Tei. There is an old tenement building, home for the elderly, and then a restaurant on the ground floor. In the evening, they put 4 to 5 tables in the street, set by Mr. Fang. The shop received summonses. I want to ask you, because of time constraint, what is your solution? What is your proposed solution? We go to ask the residents, how do they look at it? Now you support that. I'm against. I'm against the fixed penalty. Please direct the question through the chair instead of having a dialogue among yourselves. I think she has misunderstood my point. Those who oppose fixed penalty, those who oppose the law. I'm not referring to that. You've given the question to that gentleman. My position is that I oppose the legislation. Ms. Cheng, do you have anything to add? I want to ask my question again. If there is still time for me for the second round. Yes, please wait in the line. Okay, I'll wait in the line. I have some view on that. I have heard the views of the deputations. There are several questions. The attraction of a city relies very much on its activities. But ours are a very crowded city, and if such activities affect people's living, that is not a desirable situation. There must be a suitable balance as far as the policy is concerned. I have heard the views on either side of the proposal. Some say the government is too strict in enforcing the law. It doesn't allow even one chair in the street. That's one side. But I also want to hear from the deputations. What do you think is permissible? And what about those who occupied large areas in the streets? Some say that business is difficult, rent is high, but the space shouldn't be occupied. But the owners let out these space which doesn't belong to them. Do you suggest a licensing system? And through a licensing system to manage the place, I really want to know the view of the trade. Mr. Leung, Ms. Ellen Leung. Chairman, just now, I have spoken on that somehow. Shops extension because of high rent. You say that's a problem of the shops, but not the problem of the government. Now, in the context of Hong Kong, those operating in Mong Kok, the shop rents about $200,000-$300,000 for 20 or 30 square feet. That's the government's. This may be the government's responsibility. If you do business, you should have factored in the cost. And you should think beforehand, but you cannot forecast that. Now, a restaurant used to pay $200,000 per month, and now its rent is increased to $2 million. How can they have expected that? You have to consider the shop operators. They also have votes. Mr. Chung. Thank you, Chairman. How a balance can be achieved between doing business and using the streets. Well, we have a humble demand. Just allow me to walk through. And that's what we ask. Take my constituency as an example. The vegetable stalls have occupied the pavement and we can't walk through. We have a humble demand. We just want to walk through. This year, we did it again. We did the operation. We warned them first, and then we enforced the law. Before we enforced the law, we did publicity. The departments, the district councillors went to the streets and told the operators that we would enforce the law. We talked to the small operators. We would certainly penalize you if you occupied the street. The district council plays a role. Say, for example, Kowloon City District Council. The whole council agrees on the black spots. Unanimously agreed on the black spots. And then we work together, education and publicity first, and then law enforcement followed. It was acceptable by the shop operators. They asked us to set a fixed standard. What do you mean by 1 quarter? Mr. Yip Kin Yuen, I give you the floor. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning obstruction by shops, one way, of course, is to step enforcement, and there is also exercising self-restraint or self-discipline. Concerning the question raised by Ms. Chang is very good. Can self-discipline work? Mr. Fogg was trying to answer the question. He mentioned mediation and communication. I would like to give the time to Mr. Fogg to supplement his view and see what other deputations think, whether communication, self-discipline, self-restraint, and communication will help. Mr. Fogg, please be brief and precise, and because other people also want to speak. Now, we visited the homes, and we have an interesting outcome. They are not entirely against it. It goes back to the original issue. In that community, how do the residents and other users look at the street and how the street should be used? The shop operators have to form themselves together into a group and then set standards and achieve a consensus. And then law enforcement will be based on that consensus. It's a good way of building a community. Ms. Stone. Concerning self-discipline mentioned by Ms. Tong, I think that's a very good point. I have 3 photos. Chik Fai Street in Taiwan. The shop operators do not exercise self-restraint. FEHD officers warn them every day. They issue more than 30 summonses per day. They still occupy the street. The street is 8 feet wide and they take up 6 feet. And if there is a shopper, then there is only 1 foot left for the pedestrians. I know they have difficulties in doing business. I try to find a balance. I talk to the shop operators. I talk to the owners' corporations. Finally, the shop operators smash the wall of the building to facilitate storing their goods. Is it self-discipline? The Glamour Garden use the funds of the owners' corporation to sue the shop operators. It is happening every day in Taiwan. Do they exercise discipline, self-discipline, self-restraint? Issuing a summons will only lead to $200, $300. I was alarmed to hear that $1,200 was imposed on just 1 stool or 1 chair. Is it the problem of the court? Why Taiwan residents support legislation? Because we want a harmonious community, so that there is self-restraint and there is that is peace and harmony. They are yelling in the street every time, calling for their patrons in the small hours of the morning. We need to sleep. We need to have tranquility. A pavement 8 feet wide, 6 feet occupied by the shops, will last until 10 to 11. We have 10 minutes available. I still have one more member on the list who want to have the first round. And then I give the floor to the member, and there will be no second round. You don't need to ask. If there is time, I will give you the floor. Mr. Ho Chun-yin. Chairman, thank you. I have heard the views of the deputations. We all admit that there is obstruction, the obstruction problem, and there are also shops who have done too much. Now, some restaurants even occupy a meter parking space, and then they occupy more than half of the pavement. Pardon me, Mr. Chung. This is a fact. This is a problem. We have to admit it. And they're causing environmental problems. The question before us is whether there should be fixed penalty. Some say that you should fine according to a time slot, according to the land premium. That's not the best way. The law, there is only one law. Whether you are rich or poor, you are equal before the law. Well, say, if we have to compete with the tall guys in playing basketball, they are much taller than us, so we send 5 people into the court, and they are only allowed. We send 8 people into the court, and they are only allowed 5. That's not fair. Now we have to set the standard. If they step out of line, then they should be penalized. Mr. Chang of Kowloon City, I think your warning, your suggestion warning, should be done. Not everybody knows what's happening in this council. If you don't give them a warning, they really don't know that there is a law. In AD 24, if you form a team to promote fighting against the Japanese, when they went to South China, they even didn't know that the Qing dynasty had already collapsed. Well, publicity, of course, is necessary, and I hope your API will not demonize the shop operators as alleged by the deputations. I think we should deal with extreme cases, and we should maintain a good business environment for the shop operators. For the one who opposes this, for the one who opposes that, Mr. Fogg on the questionnaire survey. If you adopt such an approach, social costs will be very high. Can it be simpler? On one hand, provide a business environment for the small operators, and at the same time solve the problem. You have to leave some time to him. I think you refer to Mr. Fogg, who is sitting at the last row. Yes, Mr. Fogg, please brief. I only have some tens of seconds. The most important thing is the community itself. This is an opportunity for the shop operators to discuss among themselves, and they have to understand the expectation of other road users and the residents. And the residents can understand the situation of the shops and what sort of streets they want. That is the most important element. If you have resources, then many social organizations or service agencies in the district are willing to do some user survey. Just issue a few questions, and then they will know. Time is not enough, and I will not allow a second round of questions. I now give the floor to the officials. Perhaps the Deputy Director, Ms. Hui, can make an integrated response. I thank members and also the deputations for giving their views, which are very substantive. Now, this is a public consultation period. We are happy to listen to the views of the district councils, the shop operators, and also the representatives of the residents. I want to clarify something here. In paragraph 3.7, we put it down very clearly. Our proposal will have some impacts on the shop operators and also the employees. Therefore, we want to find a suitable balance. And we will compile a report having heard the views of different sectors and stakeholders before we compile a report and submit the report to the steering committee. Apart from visiting residents groups, we also visit the district councils and the shop associations.
We have already visited, or we have had meetings with the 16 district councils. As for operators, as Honorable Mr. Cheung had mentioned just now, on Monday we have had a meeting with the restaurant owners and shop operators. And also we have participated in a working group for restaurants and food-related businesses working group. And we also have set up a consultative meetings, and we will continue to follow up on that before we come up with a consolidated report reflecting the views. Now, as for the discretion of enforcement, will that be given out to the district councils in the future? Well, actually, for the district councils, they reflect the people's views, and they are a channel for us to get to the public's views, and also the district councils monitor the work of the departments. If we come to the conclusion that the fines are to be standardized, then, well, the enforcement will be, or discretion on enforcement will be given to the head of a department, and the head of the department will devolve that power to the frontline officers, enforcement officers. Now, for the opinions heard just now, the question was asked whether enforcement should be stepped up in some areas, and for others, because of the special characteristics of the areas, they should be more lenient. In fact, that is already the case. As we have explained to the district councils, it is true that the inspection teams very often visit these black spots. And these black spots, because of time, because of the location, and because of the expectations of the people and residents, they change. And there is an area of extension of 8 inches, which we will say find admissible, such as in the flower market area. And according to the complaints, according to the people's reflections, and according to the information that we get at the department, we will decide on these and mete out these discretions. And we will continue to listen to opinions and views and consider them before we prepare the final report. Yes, this session of the Deputations meeting is coming to an end. I would like to thank the organizations and individuals for coming up. You may leave now, and in 5 minutes' time we will reconvene, and the Vice Chair, Mr. Fong, will chair the meeting in the next session.